Well, hello and welcome to Sunday Safety number 1, and that's Riding Invisible. And we've got 2 panel members that have volunteered to come along as well. If anyone else would like to join these, especially new riders, of course, you are more than welcome. And all you need to do is just send an email to Mr. B at braindump.tv. That's the web address. And you can we can sort out a hangout that way. So I've only just got back from Wales, so apologies if someone sent me a request, but I haven't seen any, I don't believe. But it's still not too late. If you send me an email quickly, we can sort it out for you. Alrighty. Now, if you're watching on YouTube and you want to ask a question and get involved, then you need to follow the link that will be on the bottom left-hand corner that says "Get involved in the Hangout," which will take you to Google Plus. And from there you can switch on the Q&A app, which is in the top right, which looks like a number of square boxes. From there you'll find Q&A, and then you can ask us live any questions, any comments, anything at all that you want to do. You can do it through there, and then we can look at that, read it out, and go from there. Alrighty, so Ryan Invisible. So what's it all about? Well, I'll just briefly give you an idea. A lot of people say, "Oh no, you want to be wearing high vis, make sure people can see you," and all that sort of stuff. Is normally the reaction I get to riding invisible. They think I'm crazy when I say that. But it's quite a fairly commonly well-known format of riding, and it's basically defensive riding. Okay, and defensive riding is planning for things that may happen, and making sure that you've got a plan to deal with that. Whether it be trying to get out of the way of something or looking where people don't always look and all sorts of things. A good example is going through a green traffic light. Some people just go through the green traffic light and they just keep looking forwards. But riding an invisible way of going through a green traffic light is to look left and right and look for any vehicles that are going through a red light. That might be just somebody on Facebook as they're driving, or on Twitter, or whatever it be. But it also might be an emergency vehicle who, they can go through red lights. They go through cautiously, of course, but it doesn't hurt to look. Okay, and also cyclists quite often go through red lights all the time, and so you don't want to collide with a cyclist, really, do you? So you need to have a look around, and that's kind of the quick idea of what riding invisible is all about. So, like I say, the Q&A is open, and oh wait, Ride wants a link in. Okay, just pull that there, and quickly see if I can add you, buddy. Just to let you know, this hangout will only be an hour because I don't think anyone could bear to watch any longer than that on these Safety Sunday hangouts. I'm just trying to find 08 Ride. And of course, it doesn't want me to find him. Let's try one way of doing that. Just bear me 1 second, everybody. There we go. Right, I've sent you an invite, buddy. It might well be in your junk mail or spam folder on YouTube, but there's a link in there that you can find, and you'll be able to join us. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit. Right. Okay, so please feel free, if you're watching, to ask any questions in the Q&A, and we will get to those and we'll discuss them. So I'll give you an example there of what riding invisible is all about, and that was the traffic light scenario. A green traffic light does not mean it's safe, and that's the riding invisible method of going through those lights, is to look as if it was red, essentially. So before I quickly go to the panel, Potter's Biker just says, "All right, men." Hi, buddy. Thank you. And obviously, please feel free to ask any questions. So I've just wondered, something handy. I know this is all off the cuff, but have you got an example of what riding invisible would be?
Well, I think you've summed it up really, but I think it's just being aware of your surroundings and possible things that can happen at any time. You've always got to be aware that you could be riding along quite happily 1 minute and things can go quite wrong quite quickly, especially on a motorbike. So I think it's just a case of being aware of your surroundings and possibilities of hazards and things that could happen, and making sure that you're always on the ball with it, really.
Yeah. Is there anything? Sorry to put you on the spot, Andy. But is there anything in particular you do that is kind of like by habit? Like I look left and right when I go for a green light, for example. Is there anything you do? Any particular habit that you kind of find yourself doing? Uh,
Yeah, I always find on sort of T junctions and stuff like that that I'm always, if you see a car coming, the opposite direction or coming up to the T junction, I'm always aware of that car and I watch that car as well as the road, of course, but I'm always watching that car and I'm always ready for the quick brake or the quick escape, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So I'm always aware of that. I never take it for granted that they're going to stop, or even if they are stopped. As you know, some people come into junctions very quickly, and that can be a bit off-putting. So you've always got to be aware junctions and stuff like that. But because we've all had it where they will come out,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen you, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, just be aware of that all the time, you know.
Yeah. People pulling out in front of you.
Yeah,
And I caught one on video a while ago. It was a BMW. Funny enough.
that's
Um,
funny.
but
Strange.
he was starting to pull out, and I was all ready to stop. I'd
Mm.
already covered the brakes and everything ready for him. But he stopped. He actually stopped. He sort of like moved out, and like his bumper and his front wheel was just over the line. And he stopped, and he was looking right at me. And I thought in my head, oh, he's finally bothered to look and he's seen me. It's a good job I was running invisible, because the next thing he did is he just pulled right out in front of me. It's like, really?
I think as well, another situation like that is like when you're filtering between two, lines of traffic. You've always got to be aware that if they get fed up in one lane and think they can move quicker in the other side, they will hop across. Especially if there's a little gap, they will hop across. So that's another thing that you've always got to be aware of, that they could potentially hop across. And I did have a mate, about 3 years ago, who got knocked off his bike on the M25 filtering because a car hopped from one lane to the other and took him right out. So you've got to be aware of that as well.
Never assume that you're right, because
Mm.
when you're filtering, even though it's legal, it's your responsibility to filter safely. So you've got to watch out for the cars that are switching lanes, because if you hit them, it's 9 times out of 10 your fault.
Yeah. And I'm going to go into more detail on the filtering stuff as well next week. But essentially, yeah, I mean, if there is a gap for a car to move into, then your filtering needs to change accordingly until there is no gap. Because if there's a gap there, then good chance that someone will try and switch across. So yeah, excellent stuff. Now there is. Oh, sorry. Now let's go to Dave. Actually, Dave, have you got anything you do in particular in terms of defensive riding, stroke riding invisible, that you do as a matter of course?
Well, I've always, when I'm coming up to junctions or entrances into roads, I always look up them. I know it doesn't always appear to that I do it on the videos, but my eyes always move. It's because I can't move my neck, for those who don't know. I always make sure there's nothing coming down when I'm coming through. I'm covering my brakes. If there's a car waiting to pull into traffic, I cover my brakes. I have had one instance where out of a single lane, one van was waiting to pull out, and an impatient driver decided to go on the inside of him and pull straight out into traffic and almost hit me on that. And it was only because I saw his tail lights that I knew to stop. So yeah, it's be vigilant, be aware, keep your eyes open, not just in front of you as well, in behind you. When I'm going up to a set of lights, I always look in my mirrors to make sure that the person behind me has seen that I've stopped. But I've also got my hand on the throttle just in case I need to pull forward if he doesn't see me.
And obviously in gear.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just make a big rev bomb and then get hit by a car, which isn't good. Yeah, absolutely. Some good ones there as well, and especially the mirrors as well. I think in terms of safety on my bike, one of the big safety pluses for me is having mirrors where I can see. I'm so conscious of what's going on behind me, and like Gandhi, that you posted a video just recently of a biker that's come steaming past you. And even with mirrors, sometimes they're going stupid. you still don't get really time to react. So, you know, I use my mirrors extensively. Whenever I do a bike review, I always mention the mirrors because it's my safety. It's my safety thing from being, you know, hit from behind and understanding what's going on. You know, there could be road rage going on right behind me, and I might not be aware of it. You know, if I wasn't using my mirrors, which can sometimes happen. Cars bearing down on you, trying to get past, and all that. You know, so mirrors are really important in terms of the whole picture of riding invisible.
I think as well. I think with mirrors as well. I personally, you know, would never ever ride a bike without mirrors. I think they're one of the most important things on your bike. And there is times, you know, if somebody's tailgating you or something like that, or, you know, like that guy on the video I put up, he steamed past me before he done his line bend, whatever it was. He steamed past me. Well, I never had no idea he was coming that quick. But usually I look in that mirror every so often, if you know what I mean, and make sure I know. Yeah, to know that something's going on. So mirrors are very, very important, mate. I think they're one of the most. And the trouble is, though, with a lot of bikes, and we all know, especially sport bikes and whatever, the mirrors are not brilliant. Half the mirror is lost by your arms, and you only get that little bit at the end. So always, you know, sometimes if I'm using the mirror, I'll look at the mirror, and I'll look, and if I'm not happy with that, I might even reach my head over slightly to see that blind spot. Because we all have blind spots on motorbikes, the same as we do in cars. Yeah. So that's important as well, that blind spot.
I was going to say, you can have the most expensive, stylish mirrors you like, but if you can't see anything in them, they're a waste of money and pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a good link as well, because you notice that one of the first things we're sort of airing towards is awareness of what's going on and looking and visibility and everything else. And Icon Biker, he's put in a comment, a couple actually, that I'll just quickly go into. Obviously, scanning forward from the near to far, so you're looking at what's going on at close, and when you're happy with that scenario, you see what's going on further ahead, you know, that sort of stuff. He says on an open road it's too easy to watch the car in front. Yeah, but, you know, don't, basically. I never rely on a car in front to lead you in the right direction. The car in front for me is kind of the one that's not quite so important, because I position myself so that if he does anything stupid, I'm out of trouble anyway. I'm kind of looking more ahead in general, but I've got that car obviously right in front of me that I can't really ignore, but it's kind of not the most important thing because I'm positioned to get out of the way of him directly. But also, he says, rather than scan from close to you, yeah, don't scan from close to you, perhaps a mile or two ahead. Yeah, definitely, as far ahead as you can. Oh, Richard's joined. Excellent. That saves me reading out all of his comments. He's in dark shadow, so...
I might have to come back in a second with my other camera, because this one's clearly very kind of spooky silhouette.
Yes.
It does have an advantage that we can't see your face.
Oh, cheers, Dave.
Okay, so we'll let Richard go over his own comments and everything. That's awesome. That does save me a job. Focus on the Q&A. So also, yeah, just to follow on from that though, while Colin's not here, he's also made a good point there is about your road positioning. Obviously, the idea of being quite invisible, you need to be able to see. You're not going to be able to see if you're sat square behind a car, or a lorry, or a van. So it is about position so that you can see. So I'll just finish off what he says though. So yeah, position to get the best view down the road and give people the best view of you. This is rarely the middle of the lane. Oh yeah, as I said, and is generally taught by training schools. Yeah, get the best view. I can't stand it when I've got, you know, the vans with the blocked out panels.
Mm-hmm.
When they're in front of you, sat in the outside lane, I think I can't see anything, so I have to back off and try and look down the side. I'm drinking coffee there. Okay. So one other thing I wanted to mention before I go back to the Q&A is what riding invisible for me in a kind of passionate way is that you can't rely on any other road user for anything. Okay. Now, some people go to the extreme and say, "Oh, ride like everyone's trying to kill you. Well, no, that's not actually fact. It's not true at all. And if you rode like that, then it would be an interesting ride to watch as well. As someone swerved all the way down the road, trying to avoid every single car driver. But you know, you think about it. Some people take a test. Some people don't take a test and they still drive. Some people steal a car and then drive that. Children can sometimes take their parents' cars and they're only 12, shoulder reach the pedal, and they can take a car out onto the road. So you do not assume for 1 second that every person on the road has got a right to drive, knows how to drive, and so on and so forth. So they're not out to kill you, but they basically just don't know what they're doing. And of course, you've got foreign drivers as well that come across from abroad. There was a nasty accident, as we all probably quite a famous one, where the guy was doing about 100 miles an hour on his bike, and the car pulled straight in front of him, thinking they had right of way. So you know, you really can't rely on the fact that you think because they're on the road they should be and they know what they're doing, because it's actually not the case. So that's one thing I would point out. I think
At the end of the day, right away or not, you're still going to come off the worst.
yeah, the right of way is a classic scenario. It's like, look, I have the right of way, but I'm dead. Okay, so you know, it doesn't matter about the right of way. There's no rights when it comes to riding invisible. There's no rights. There's no highway code. It's all about survival and not expecting someone to follow the highway code, basically. Which goes back to like the red traffic light scenario, or the green traffic light scenario, for example, and just literally put it out in front of you. Right, so I'm just going to nip back to the old Q&A. So Potter's Biker says, planning ahead is how I do it, and keeping your head on a swivel, always looking. Yeah. Good awareness of what's going on around you is vitally important. Okay, Go77, he says, on the point of covering your brakes, Dave, it's also important to be aware of what's behind you, and often, it must be prepared to hit the throttle hard to achieve, safety, in my humble opinion. Yeah, it's all about the scenario, and every scenario is so microscopically different from another. You can never really get a perfect match, and then it's a choice between, you know, if someone's hurling up behind you, what to do? Can you pull out the way to the left? If you can't, then you're going to have to use the throttle, aren't you? You know, it's all about every scenario is different. But
risk management.
Yeah.
I mean, not every driver out there is an idiot. It's the rare ones that are the idiots. Or when I say rare, there are millions of drivers on the road, and there's only a few hundred that tend to annoy us bikers by breaking the rules and putting us in danger. Most of the drivers out there, they will let us go, they will give us room, they're courteous. So we're not having a go at people, we're just telling you to look out for the ones that are having a go at you.
Yeah, because the last thing you want to do in terms of riding your bike is win the lottery, which is finding the car that's got an idiot in it, because that normally ends up in hospital or worse. So as you never know when you're going to find that car, you just have to assume each one is a winner, if that makes sense. Okay, Richard, we were, just before you joined, we were just going through each of the panel members. Hi, buddy. Welcome to join. We were just going through the panels, and what would you class as one of your main things you do in defensive riding invisible style, that you find is kind of the most biggest habit you have?
Right now, not a great deal, as you know. But,
when you're on the bike.
when I'm on the bike. For me, it's about position and speed. So everybody on here, I'm sure, has heard of IPSCA, which is the police system for taking in information, making sure you're in the right position, going at the right speed, in the right gear. The A is for acceleration, but that's not really to do with safety. That's about getting out of corners as quickly as possible. And I think those things come together very well. If you're on the information side, you're always looking as far ahead as you can, but also scanning back towards you. So you're looking at every junction, you're looking in the far distance, you're planning what you're about to do. So you see quite often people seem to be shocked when the traffic lights turn to red. But if you've been watching them for the last half mile, you know they're going to turn to red because they've been green for a long time. But you see it often in bikers, in car drivers, in cyclists. Everybody does it. So it's about taking in that kind of information. On the same point of the information, it's about giving information. So one thing that I very rarely see, apart from amongst IAM or ROSPA riders, is things like hand signals. They seem to be a lost art, but little things like giving information. So I've just turned left, and I'm about to turn left again. Rather than just leaving the indicator on, stick the left arm out. You know, it's all about kind of giving as much information to people as possible. And I suppose that goes in with the ride invisible in a way, doesn't it? It's not trying to be invisible. It's trying to be visible and trying to let people know what you're doing, as well as reacting to what people around you are doing. And then from the other point of view, your position on the road, I think I mentioned it in a comment that I think maybe you've read out while I was trying to work out how to like this new room I'm in. But too many people are taught to just go down the centre of the lane. And it's there's no hard and fast rule. The kind of standard thing that you hear is if you're going into right hand bend, left hand side of the road. If you go into a left hand bend, right hand side of the road. Although that's a little bit shaky, depends what's coming towards you. But just going through town, even positioning yourself, being aware of where every risk is, and it might be that you're changing your position constantly. But as long as that's making you as visible as possible and as far away from the risks as possible, then great. And it might be that some drivers are thinking, why is this guy going left to right all the time? But at least then they've seen you. And then coming in just to kind of finish off the ones that are important, because speed-wise, appropriate speed. And sometimes that's fast and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a little bit faster than the speed limit. Sometimes it's substantially slower than the speed limit, depending on the conditions and which parts of your view are blocked. And I think was it JSU2 was saying about the ability to be able to hit the gas. That's where your gear comes in, making sure you're in the right gear, that you can either use your gears to slow you down quickly or use your gears to accelerate quickly, and forget this car driver mentality of using as little fuel as possible. You want to be in the right gear that you can be as safe as possible.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the grave knowing that I saved 3 miles per gallon.
Well, bikers, you should know, car drivers should know that bikers are much cheaper on fuel anyway. I did 100 miles before I filled up my tank last week, and it cost me £10 and 12 pence.
I'm saying nothing.
And mine's a 22-year-old bike, and although a lot of the time I'm doing the speed limit, some of the time I'm not.
I know that this is a different topic, but I know my Z doesn't do anywhere near the mileage my car does. But that's just because of the fun, Ali.
Riding in the appropriate gear, Richard. Obviously, quite often you need
Absolutely.
to have a power point, which will use more fuel.
That's right. We're often in 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 RPM, where cars are tinkling around at 1.5 to 2.
Yeah. I know some taxi drivers that drive around in 6th gear at flipping 1,000 revs per minute and then flipping 30 mile an hour limit. And it's painful. But yeah, so good stuff there, Richard. 08 Rides finally managed to make it in. So I'll let him get himself sorted and I'll come to him for one of his... there he is. Hello, Mr. 08 Ride.
Hello, mate.
Hello.
Good evening.
Excellent. You have voice as well. It's all looking good. So now you just joined. I'm going to throw it straight into the mix. I've just gone through all the panel, and you're the next in line. Of one of the things that you do, or you find yourself doing the most in terms of that defensive stroke riding invisible habits.
Yeah, I'd pick up a bit on what Richard's just been saying. Particularly around positioning, because I find that positioning at junctions is of the utmost importance, and I've taken it from cycling and I've taken it from other things as well. in terms of the Smidsy kind of angle, and you really do have to move out towards the centre of the road, towards the white line, to make sure that somebody can see you. Where I live, there's a lot of trees that are right next to junctions, and there's no way that somebody can see anything if they are on the near side towards the centre of the road, particularly if they're going at some kind of speed. If you see a junction, you have to move out. I mean, that's a very, very key thing. And the other bit is staying alert, being hyper alert. For some reason today, I was really, really alert. And it just reminded me of when I was really, really tired in Ireland and made a couple of really big mistakes, particularly going around some really nasty corners and suddenly focusing on what I was about to hit rather than going around the corner. And it just struck me that, yeah, riding tired, it had never happened to me before, but that was horrendous. I just slowed right down.
Yeah, don't be riding tired, whatever you do. I know I know people that have actually fallen asleep and never woken up since.
It's one of those things that when you're in a group, if one of you is tired, I know it's easy in hindsight, but if one of you is tired, you need to either overtake and pull in the side so the leader knows that you pulled in, or you need to have a signal to tell each other that there's some reason that you need to stop and have a break.
Yeah. So thanks for all of your common tips. Now, riding invisible also, which I've not really got into great detail of, and I wanted to talk now a little bit about. We've talked about visibility, which is obviously key, because it's the first stage of riding invisible. If you can see the hazard, then you can do something about it. If you're not looking, then you're gonna have issues, aren't you? Really, you're not riding invisible already. So the next thing is then your exit plan, because you might hear me and other people say, yeah, well, when I'm riding, I make sure I've got an exit plan for a particular scenario or the situation that you're in at the time. Now, a very simple one to start with is, for example, when you're stopped at junctions, and in the UK at least, if we're not already filtering, when it comes to stopping at a junction, I move to the left or the right, depending on the scenario, whichever works best for me, out of the way of becoming a bike sandwich, for example. Again, this is where mirrors are important, so you can see the potential hazard coming, but it means that if you're not sat directly smack bang behind a car, which is a place that you should never really be, no matter, I can't think of a scenario right now, but there may be one, but I can't think of many, where you want to be right behind, directly behind any vehicle, left or right, so you can see what's going on. And ultimately, if you're coming to a stop, you definitely want to be on the edges there, so that you've got your escape plan, which is, of course, to pull alongside the vehicle if, for example, someone's coming up behind you a little bit busy, maybe with Facebook or Twitter, doing a text or doing a nails or doing some lipstick or whatever it may be that they might be doing, and not paying attention. And rather than you become a bike sandwich, they just bang into the car that you would have been behind if you had not have been on the left or right of that vehicle. So that's an exit plan. Okay, so I've kind of taken there just an example, just for the panel members not to just drop them right in here. I want to talk about exit plans. So I've given an example there that when you're stopping at junctions, don't leave yourself in the sandwich position. Make sure that you've got a route out. Now, of course, that does mean that you need to have mirrors, because if you haven't got mirrors, you're not going to know that anything's coming. So that you'll need those, and also, of course, you'll need to have a gear on hand and ready to go if something was to happen that you couldn't be prepared for. So that's my example of an escape plan, and what I want to do now, because I think it's quite interesting, is to see what other panel members have at their sleeve for escape plans in certain scenarios. So I'm going to go to Dave. Have you got any particular escape plans that you have lined up, mate?
Basically the same as yours. It's any stationary traffic, whatever the reason, whether it's a queue, whether it's traffic lights, train crossing the tracks, and anything at all like that. If you can't get to the front, or you choose not to because maybe you're turning left at the junction and there's two cars in front of you, just make sure that you have enough room to pull around the side of the vehicle before anything happens, and keep your eyes on the mirrors. I mean, not 100% of the time, because occasionally the driver in front might, for some reason, decide to reverse back out at you. Maybe he doesn't. Yeah, maybe he doesn't want to wait for the train to pass, and he wants to do a U-turn and drive out. So you got to keep your wits about you for that as well. So keep your finger on the horn or close to it. Look behind you. But that's basically it for stationary traffic. You just make sure that you're keeping aware and you're pulling off to the one side or the other. I don't tend to have my bike straight ever. Even though I'm off to either one side or the other side, the bike is always angled one way or the other, so that I can just pull straight out rather than have to turn and pull out.
Yeah, I like that. Angle your bike. Excellent.
It also gives a larger profile for somebody to see as well. Yeah,
excellent stuff. Yeah, I like that. That's sort of an exit plan, planning ahead, and all the rest of it. And of course, because you are sat at an angle, you're ready to go, and you can get into that little gap to safety if someone's coming hurling up behind. So yeah, I like that. Cheers, Dave. Excellent. So Andy, have you got any particular? It doesn't have, of course, it doesn't have to be when you're stationary, by the way, guys. It could be anything. But have you got exit plans?
All I can say is my exit plan is me. As easy as that. I am the exit plan because I've got to make the decisions when they crop up. And hopefully, the years and years, the 43 years I've been riding a bike, hopefully that will give me enough. I know there's situations where no exit plan is going to help you whatsoever. You're in the lap of the gods. But most of the time, like we said earlier, stuff that you do at traffic lights and what Dave has been talking about is the sort of stuff that I do anyway. But when I'm just generally riding along, it goes back to that being aware and being aware of what you can do if something happens. And I'm always ready for that something to happen. I think us motorcyclists, if we're, ride a bike in a proper manner, we're far more astute to what's going on around us than any car driver. And I know that myself, because if I drive my car, I can honestly say I'm not as switched on, I don't think, as I am on a motorbike. Because I know the motorbike is, a far-fetched thing more than a car. So I think my exit plan is what am I going to do next if that car comes out, or if this thing swings round, or this barrier comes down, or something, or these traffic lights change. It's my exit plan, and it's solely up to me to make that decision to make sure that I ride in a safe manner.
For the new riders out there, you'll find that what we're talking about seems to be a lot of thinking, but it's only that when you first start off. Once you've been riding for a few years, it becomes instinct. So if you position your bike right, you instinctively know that if something's going to happen, that's what you're going to do. It's not as if to say, oh, there's a vehicle coming. Oh, what have I got to do now? Oh, yeah, I've got to just let the clutch out, increase the throttle, pull out to the side. It becomes instinctive very, very quickly.
Comes natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I like to get new riders on these, and it is really important because we take so much, well, I know I do, I take so much for granted, and it's only when someone says something, it gives you the opportunity then to explain, and that's why I quite often post the videos, to provoke thought, because we take it for granted, don't we? If you've been riding a long time, you just take everything for granted. So, oh, you just do that, and then someone says, oh, I'm a new rider. Oh, no, don't do that. This is what you do. But you need that trigger, don't you? You need that thing so you go, actually, well, I do that all the time, but actually it's worth mentioning, obviously, because you're not aware of that particular thing. So
we do forget that we know.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of it's autopilot now, isn't it, for us, I think? And
I think sometimes as well, Andy, you've got to realise every ride is different, and don't think you're too smart, because you're not. You're
never too
old.
You
can always learn something new. I always remember watching a video a few months back, and that was from Roadcraft Nottingham. I watched this video, and I thought, you know, I weren't aware of that. And I actually, sent him a message saying, thank you for that. Been riding a bike 43 years, and you've just shown me something, and I'm not too old or too proud to admit that I had learned something. And always be prepared to learn something,
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Very important that. I say that a lot. I mean, I've just got my habit, but you need other people, and that's why I try to promote other people coming into these to give another point of view, so that we can look at it and learn something from that as well. I mean, like remembering to make sure that you check your caliper bolts, for example. Everyone makes mistakes and needs to learn those little nuances that us have picked up, other people have picked up through their riding habits. So I am now going to go, and thanks for that, Sir Gandhi and Dave. Richard, do you have any particular good exit strategies that you use?
It's a strange. I mean, just to pick up on that last point that Andy made about Roadcraft Nottingham. The reason that he's got that name, apart from I think that his training school, I think is called Roadcraft, isn't it? But Roadcraft is a well-known book that if you've never read it, it's worth a read because it makes you think.
Yeah.
It's the police riding manual. If you do your advanced training, you don't do all of that. It's like a subset of that. I'm going through that, or I should be going through that at the minute for the observer training. On the kind of pre-planned stuff. Very much what you were saying, Andy. For when you stopped planning the fact that you should be able to go. There's a concept. I think they call it something like the triangle of death or the triangle of doom or something equally overdramatic. But it's the idea that if you draw two lines, if you imagine a plan view of the car in front of you, draw two lines coming out from that,
Yeah.
and meeting, they would form a triangle with the back of that vehicle. And you should never put yourself in that triangle.
I like that. Yeah.
And that's for two reasons. One is they might break down. You should never do this in a car either. They might break down and then you're stuck behind them.
Yeah.
And no doubt the people behind you have pulled right up to the back of you and now you've got a traffic jam. But also they might start reversing, or somebody might come up behind you and has not spotted you. All these things that you've already said. And I think when you stopped, that is the time when it's easiest to make a plan. I think for every other situation, it is about planning. It's about understanding where the risks are up the road. But I think the one thing that is the most important is to be a thinking rider, not to have a hard and fast rule. So, I mean, in 90% of situations when you're coming up to a car and you think it's about to pull out of the side road quick, and there's a car coming the other way, you're going to tuck in behind it, or you're going to slow down and tuck in behind it. But there's those 10% of situations where suddenly that's not possible. There's another car falling out. So make your plan, but be prepared to change it at the last second, because there's always that possibility that something will happen that you've not planned for. And I think that's the main thing, is about teaching yourself to think, to be a thinking rider all the time. And in a way it's slightly different to what Dave was saying, but it also becomes second nature. So I know that when you're starting to think about positioning and looking up the road, it's really blooming difficult. If you've been a centre of the lane rider who's always looking 100 feet ahead of you, which a lot of people do and don't realise 100 feet is covered in about a second. That's not even a reaction time. But when you're trying to switch over to looking a mile down the road and 100 feet ahead as well and everywhere in between, and positioning and thinking about all the risks, it's really hard work. It's really tiring. And you should be pulling over and having a rest whenever you start to feel tired. God, it's all linking together. But actually, it does become second nature. And as it becomes second nature, it's easier to think about even more subtle things. So now, it's become second nature. You've automatically positioned because you've seen a car 500 yards up the road coming towards a junction, or you can see it over that bush coming down, and it can't see you because there's bushes in the way and he's lower down. But you've already taken that into account, and now you're looking at the leaves on the road, and it's all the time trying to improve yourself. Just one final point. I think a good way of learning is to have a look at YouTube videos of people who, and you and I have a very similar view. I think on a lot of these videos, a lot of people put themselves in danger, and then end up putting a video up about it, which are entertaining to watch. But it's actually very useful to watch all these ones. And again, 90% of the time, if you watch them a few times, you can see what they could have done to completely avoid the situation in the first place.
Yeah.
And in the cases where they couldn't avoid the situation, you can start to think about, how could you have avoided the outcome of the situation. Dave had a very good one about that on when he went round and round about the other week, and a car pulled out in front of him, and he was saying to himself, I should have been able to see this coming. But having that self-analysis, accepting that you're going to make mistakes, because you could have been riding for 50 years, you're still going to make mistakes. Accepting them. This technology we've got in the cameras allows you to look back at them and say, what could I have done? And YouTube allows you to look at other people and say, if I was in the same situation, what could I have done?
Yeah.
I'd have been riding 30 years this year. So you're never too old to learn, and that's why I put the video up so that other people can look at it, draw their own conclusions, and see if they agree or disagree with me, and understand that, like I said before, it doesn't matter who has right of way. If you insist on continuing because you had the right of way, you're going to end up coming off worse.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's nothing you can hit on a bike without putting yourself at risk. In a car, you can plough through people and bikes and things like that, and it makes no difference. But there is essentially nothing that you can hit on a bike and be guaranteed to come out of it okay.
Yeah. And I think what I want to touch on as well, Rich, and it was a good thing you said, was about the as you draw this information in, some of it starts to become your automatic back of the autopilot stuff, which allows more capacity to think about other things. And it was a good example yesterday. I've been out in Wales. I've only just come back, and I've been doing a bit of hooning around the roads there. And there was some hoonage going on, and but then we got into one particular section of road, and I noticed that the road quality had changed quite significantly, and there were a lot more potholes. And trust me when I tell you, the hoonage was switched off, because you didn't know when the next pothole was going to be on which corner, where, whatever. And so, these things, it all builds into like a big picture. And the more capacity you build, the better a rider will make you be, because you can look out for those other things. Like, the road quality is degraded, so now I can't ride like I have been riding, and I have to be prepared for a pothole in the road. Roadworks, obviously if there's potholes, you never know, the government might have got around to actually fixing stuff.
I think that's actually a really good point, and again, as you're building that ability to automatically adjust for things, you think kind of two steps away. So yes, the road's full of potholes, so you're avoiding individual potholes, which is taking a lot of attention away from the distance stuff. So you start, well, I should slow down. But if you've got potholes, well, that material has gone somewhere. So if you've got potholes, you've probably got gravel. Yes, there might be roadworks. Oh, it's that what if? What if over the hill they're repairing those potholes? But you get into that kind of thing of, there's a dustbin on the side of the road on the pavement. So around this corner there might be a what do you call them? The trucks that take away your rubbish. A rubbish truck.
Yeah.
I was trying to think. Dustbin. But it's trying to get into that ability to think more. As you're going down the road and thinking about your positioning, and you can see the street lights, which might not be on, but you can see the poles or the telegraph poles are actually starting to go across the road. Does that mean there's a bend coming? But it's these kind of things that once you've automatically adjusted for everything else, you can start thinking about those extra things. If there's a school sign nearby, you should expect kids, but you should also expect a ball to come flying over, even if it's the middle of the day. It's all these kind of things, and I don't know, you can get a bit bit paranoid about it. But if you've got that what-if mentality, if you're always adjusting for all the conditions, it gives you a much better chance of reacting to something.
Yeah.
One last point on the autopilot thing as well. I think that's something to watch out for. Is there's two kinds of autopilot. There's the automatically adjusting to what's happening, and then there's the autopilot that you can get away with in a car, where you come up against a junction, you think, oh, this is my junction, and you've gone for 15 miles and you can't remember any of it. And if you catch yourself doing that on a bike, it's time to pull over and have a cup of tea, I think.
Absolutely, mate. Good point, well made. Yeah, there is a big difference in autopilot. Yeah, I have to say, I remember every yard of the riding I've been doing the last couple of days, and great riding it was too. Okay, right, let's go to 08 then, for his favourite exit strategy, or one that you would like to suggest, and then I'll go quickly back to the Q&A. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, talking about your junctions bit, there's two elements to it. One is I'm pretty crap, for want of a better word, at junctions in terms of coming up behind cars and just stopping. But I have really got myself into making sure I'm watching the car that's coming behind and seeing what it's doing. But even if it did something bad, I'd probably be in a bad position to be able to do anything about it. So it is something that I need to sort out. The other bit about junctions is filtering, and we haven't mentioned filtering yet. I don't know whether you're going to go into it later. If you're filtering, it sets you into a totally different mode of thinking and way of riding anyway. But it gets you out of that exit plan, but it puts you into requiring other exit plans as well, and other modes of thinking. There are a couple of exit plans that I do, mainly because I'm an old fart that isn't very risk-taking type. One is braking distance. I'm constantly checking my braking distance and counting 2 seconds, 4 seconds in the wet, or even more if it's even worse weather, with the car in front. I have to admit I'm sometimes closer than that, but once I notice it, I'm pulling back. The other bit is slower speeds. I do go at slower speeds to most of the riders because I know that I'm not good enough to actually handle the bike and handle anything that might happen if something happens at a higher speed. So I choose to go at a slower speed because I'm aware that I don't have those skills to be able to deal with it. That links into with your changing roads element, Andy. In Ireland, you would go around a corner and suddenly there's a Ford coming across with cobbled stones underneath it, or it was suddenly brand new repaving of the road with gravel all over it, and it's going to be gravel for God knows how long. And again, it comes back to slower speeds, and I just slowed straight down, right down, because I don't really know those roads. I don't know how they're going to react with my bike. The other guys were going much faster, and they were perfectly safe with it, but I just didn't feel safe on it, not knowing what was going to happen. And so it's that indecision that sort of makes you slow down a little bit and take things a bit more careful. But it all links into a bit of courtesy as well, linked in with patience. There's a lot of impatience that I see, and very close riding, especially when people are in groups. And I prefer to be a lot more courteous and make sure that the car in front has seen me, knows that I'm there, and is either choosing to block me or choosing to slightly move over to let me through. And once I know that they know that I'm there, at least I can do something about it. Either one of those things. It's when they don't know that I'm there that I'm hyper alert onto the issues.
Yeah. No, you made some good points there as well, and you mentioned the blocking thing. and that the whole blocking thing, you see, it allows you. This is like the extra capacity that we were talking about before, where you might be looking at the road condition or the cars and what's going on, 2 miles down the road and what's right in front of you and everything else. But also, you get so there's so much. I thought about doing a video where I could just try and emulate via graphics how my brain's working and all the things that it's doing just for a section of video. And I realised it'd probably take me about a year to edit. But just for example, the blockers, people think, oh yeah, like you're road raging and everything else. No, I'm trying to understand who the driver is. And if a driver is going to deliberately move out and try and block me, I know that they are an additional hazard that then is going to take more of my attention, and I will focus more attention to that. I like to say I'll give that 30% now, which is quite a lot, to be honest, with all the other things going on. But that's quite a potential hazard there, because they're a little bit threatening, so I need to keep an eye on that one. And again, that links into riding invisibility. With the road surface conditions and being comfortable with your bike, obviously you'll get more confident, and on the more surfaces you go on with your bike and the way it handles and the way you go around them, you'll get that confidence to know and understand it more. I always say, understand your bike, mess around with it, change the oil and filter and stuff, get close to it, and that way you'll feel better about riding it on the road, knowing it's good, and getting to understand it, and you'll be able to ride faster or slower depending on your results from your previous ride, if that makes sense. And you build a kind of a history of how it rides on what conditions, and you can then ride accordingly to it.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Except there's always, say, there's gravel on the road, and you've been all right so far. So you push it a little bit, but gravel's a strange thing. It just moves underneath you, and to me, there's a lot of roads here in Yorkshire at the moment that have been recently gravelled, but the cars have really damped down the gravel along two grooves where their wheels go. So I was coming back from Skipton today. Yeah, you can tank it along those. It's nice, patted down bits, as long as you're staying in those grooves. But you hit the middle bit where there's still loose gravel, and to me, that would be a worry. It would be a concern, irrespective. And I might have done it at 60 miles an hour one day, but another time at 50, I might go flying. And it's that one time when you go flying that you don't actually want it to happen.
No. And I'll tell you what, I'll pick up on the gravel thing, because funny enough, in Wales, I think there was 3 of us riding together, and there must have been about a 2.5 to 3 mile section, and absolutely you do not go fast in gravel sections. There's a number of things with that, especially if you're with other riders, is that firstly you're going to have less grip, and it isn't unknown where cars might have pushed the gravel to. The second thing is that I don't know if you've ever been behind a bike before when it's riding through gravel, but it's basically like being sat behind a shot blaster. So, seriously, in gravel, you ride slowly. Be courteous to the rider behind you or the driver, because you're going to be flicking stones everywhere. And also, of course, the loss of traction. But for me, the main thing is just making sure that I'm not firing stones at someone else behind me. And, corners, it's unpredictable. And, the last thing, when you hit that little, heap of gravel, sometimes it's kind of just, why is that there? I was in a perfectly clean patch for a moment. Then there's a little mound, and you go, whoa! And it's like, yeah, no, I totally agree, mate. Ride slow in gravel, because it's, a vlogger's name come to mind. I would say it was who encouraged riding in gravel, but it's not there. No.
The one thing that does spring to mind is bikes inherently want to stay upright all the time once they get past a certain speed. So if you are riding on gravel, and you hit some really loose stuff, what you need to do is loosen up. You don't tense up. Don't try and steer your way out. Just loosen up. The bike will work its own way through it, and then you carry on again. But yes, you do right. You are doing right. You ride at your comfort level for the conditions that you're in.
Yeah. it's like the other thing I experienced a lot today as well that I've not seen for a while because I've been out in Wales. They've got lots of cat's eyes, and I have noticed that they're quite raised, and it's like an extreme form of gravel. And you talk about riding loose, Dave. Yeah, because the wheels are going bang, 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 getting flipped left, right, and centre, but it will stay upright. Don't try and pan it with the steering. You know, you could. The bike will waggle around underneath you, but it will stay upright. And so just loosen up and ride it out, basically. Right, now then. Thanks for that as well. Wait, by the way. What we need to do now...
I'll just pick up on a couple of points that I mentioned. And it's particularly to do with going a bit slower, because if you're not keeping up with all the information, or if the conditions are worse, then you should slow down. But I think it's quite interesting that the impatience point. I know that I've been impatient quite a lot of times. And it's too easy on a bike to be behind somebody who's doing 58, and you think, why aren't you doing 60? It's hard to slow down sometimes, but you can get yourself in a lot of trouble by being impatient. I watched a very popular channel the other day. I won't say who it was, but there was a video where the chap was trying to make progress as quickly as possible. And making progress is a term that comes up a lot as well. Making progress doesn't necessarily mean going fast. It literally means making progress. But you watch this video, and he didn't have the get-out plan, and he was heading down 2 lanes on his side, 2 lanes the other side, nothing in between, just white lines. And he pulled into the right-hand lane because he could see a queue of traffic ahead, and immediately opened the throttle up a little bit to start overtaking, at which point a car, also in the left-hand lane, saw that there was a queue ahead, so he was going to pull to the right. But because the motorcyclist had pulled out to the right and put himself in the blind spot, the car driver didn't do what you're supposed to do, have a look over your shoulder, but we know that a lot of people never look over the shoulders. And he didn't have the get-out plan, so he was forced onto the wrong side of the road. And he missed a van by inches.
Wow.
So he was squeezed between a car and a van coming the other way. And when you watched it, you could see it coming, because you could see this queue of slow-moving traffic in the left-hand lane. And I think it was the impatience that pushed him down that route that could have been the end of him. One other really quick one, just for 08. One thing that was said to me about if you're not sure about whether the guy in front of you has seen you or not when you're looking to overtake. I mean, one is never assume he's seen you at all anyway.
Yeah, right, visible.
Exactly. But if your overtake's not on, then staying at your 2 seconds back as a minimum is a good thing. But when you're that far back that you can stop if you need to, it's quite useful just to pull across to the left and then back across to the right, especially with your headlight on, because you move from the right-hand mirror through the rear-view mirror to the left-hand mirror and back again. And if they haven't seen you by then they're never going to see you.
The good thing about that is the human eye is designed and keyed to see moving objects rather than still objects. So if you're moving, it'll see it in its peripheral vision, and it alerts you to something that's there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing your makeup or playing on your mobile phone.
Yes,
Exactly.
that's true.
Now,
Well, I never do my makeup while riding.
The chin guard keeps getting in the way.
That's right.
just
I get lipstick on my visor.
Rocky Horror. But no, and actually, that is a lovely, lovely little link, because the next thing I'm going to do, once I've tackled into Q&A, we might run over because it's going well, but not too long now, because I don't want to make it too long for people to watch back. But of course, there is fast forward and rewind, as we all know. But however, some viewers on YouTube still haven't understood that yet. They go, "Oh my God, it's so long!" Yeah, fast forward, mate, it's easy. But the other thing about Riding Invisible that I want to tackle next is loud pipes. Okay, because you're talking about whether or not people can see you. There's a number of, well, there's hundreds of scenarios in my head that I've experienced where my loud exhaust has made a big difference. Now, before we get to that, though, I just want to go to the Q&A because there's got lots of questions coming from the viewers, so I want to go and tackle those. So let's start with someone new in the Q&A, and that's Bimble Boy Blue. Hello, buddy. And he says, "Evening, gents. My instructor recently told me having the right of way doesn't make hospital food taste any better." Oh, excellent point taken. Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, I said it on my last Ride Invisible video a long time ago. Yeah, right of way. If you're thinking about right of way when you're riding your bike, you're not riding invisible. It's as simple as that. You know, right of way. It just doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything as a biker. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand it. Why would people worry about right of way? Because if you want to survive, you're not worried about whether other people are worried about right of way. It's about survival and keeping an eye out. Great point, I have to say.
You have got a lot of time to be righteous, indignant, and angry while you're in hospital, though, haven't you?
That's true.
Yeah.
But you've also got the same right riding behind him at the safe distance, venting your anger in your head.
Yeah, I have to say though, the whole point of riding invisible is not being in a position where you're in hospital going, but I had the right of way. That's the victim of not riding invisible. But yeah, absolutely. And of course, that's the best case scenario. If you're dead, you can't even do that, can you? So, great point there, Bimble Boy Blue. Excellent stuff. Who else we got? Back to Red Moto from the US. Hi, buddy. He says, "I had one instructor say one thing and another tell me the opposite. Not sure which one to tell to screw off. One does have scrapes on his bikes." Well, that might be an indication, or let us know what they were talking about and arguing about. I mean, see, the Ride Invisible doesn't follow a law. It just follows, well, common sense, really. So therefore, it's whatever works for you. But yeah, let us know what that was. I'd be interested to know what it was they differed on. It does happen here in the UK as well.
We all have different abilities and different riding styles. So, like he says, there is no one fixed rule for one that covers everybody else. I'm a disabled rider, so what might work for Andy could possibly not work for me.
Exactly, and that's when hard and fast rules don't work. But there is no hard and fast rules with Ride Invisible. It's about survival and doing the best thing in the scenario that you're in. Which if you print a book like the Highway Code, for example, it's a set list of rules, and no one follows those anyway. So it kind of gets lost. But you go for the general idea. Now, also, Hebcat Harley pops in and he says limit points are greatly reduced with the roadside overgrowth, etc. Yeah, have you noticed that in the UK they don't cut the grass anymore? The visibility is terrible now for corners. But anyway,
I think that's called cutbacks, Andy.
Oh, see what you did there, or not, as the case may be. But yeah, overgrowth and so on. So ride to what you can see and can adjust to should the unexpected happen. Scan for junctions, geographical hints for how the road will change, villages, towns in the distance, etc. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One thing he hasn't mentioned is high winds. One of the things that I always do is look at trees. The more they're bending over, the harder the wind is.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole other thing, isn't it? Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it, to think that what we know in our heads that we don't ever talk about. There's so much information out there, and hopefully during the course of all of these safety hangouts that we do and everything else, and vlogs in general, you can pick up all those little snippets of information. It's just awesome.
It's not just the UK though, Andy. Having just been to Ireland, it was horrendous there. The vanishing point just vanished at times, and you could not see where the road was going to go at all. You have to be very, very careful with some of those corners.
Oh, tell me about it. Was it yesterday? We went. I'll tell you what. I have to tell you right now, very quickly. I don't want to go off topic, but there's a road to Aberystwyth in Wales that goes over a mountain. It's an awesome road, but quite often the road leads to the sky. It's like, where's it going to go after that? So yeah, absolutely, mate. But oh, what a fun road that was, I have to say.
That reminds me of some roads that were on the the ride that hasn't happened yet, that hopefully will happen, the Coast and Coffee, where there were roads that just looked like they dropped off the earth. The state. I mean, 1 in 3 roads that just dropped away from you.
Yeah.
And we were going over those, and people were shooting past and going over them quickly. You go over them, and there the sheep are. And it's things that you'd never expect to be there.
Yeah. I tell you, that's a great point as well, Richard. Is like, knowing the road is probably one of your worst enemies if you're trying to ride hard, because you might know the road, but do you know the 300 sheep and where they are right now? Well, actually, no. Sorry, I only might do. But
we're doing something, mate. We know where all the sheep are.
Exactly.
Around here, our problem on the Westwood are cattle, cows, and we actually had somebody suggesting that they should all wear fluorescent jackets because people were crashing into them rather than just slowing down, and looking out for 2 tons of beef.
Yeah, that's kind of similar to hitting a brick wall.
Pretty much.
You could give all pedestrians fluorescent jackets as well, because those are more stupid than a bovine.
Costs us a lot in yellow jackets.
Indeed.
Yeah, we're all pedestrians.
Yeah, but have you noticed that bike riders are far safer, and not only in a car, but as pedestrians as well? Because we're looking out for these things to start off with.
And we're very good at filtering
run over by a bike.
And that's because we go out on the roads for fun. We actually choose to go out and go, I'm going for a ride. You've got no bloody direction. You've got no destination. You're going for the fun of it. Whereas in a car, you get in a car and you fill it up with your kids, or you're going to the shops, or you're going to work, or this, that, and the other. It's a totally different mentality, and I see it as bike riders come off their bikes and they're happy. They've got a smile on their face. They've enjoyed themselves. Car riders, cyclists. I don't know how cyclists can actually manage a commute to work, because most of the YouTube videos that I see, they are so stressed out because of the shit that they get. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I will
go cycling for fun, actually.
I will admit that I ride to work at an average of 12 to 14 miles to work every day. If there's something wrong with my bike, I will walk to work, which will take me 16 minutes, and it's half a mile away.
So you did that. Yeah.
Because I get off the bike, I feel happy, I don't feel stressed, I don't feel, oh, why am I at this works again, this, that, and the other. I'm ready to do a good day's work perfectly and smartly, because I've enjoyed my ride getting there. And the same when you're coming back. It's shorter coming back, so I can watch my telly. But either way, it's still a ride, and it's comforting.
Yeah. But it's also a part of riding safely. If you know that other people are stressed out and unhappy, especially if there's a massive queue going on, and you're going, wow, I've just gone past 5 miles worth of traffic filtering. I'm happy. It's been nice and easy for me. I've really enjoyed it. But you've also got to think, hey, those people that are still sat in that queue and the ones that are just in front are still pissed off because they've been there for 2 hours. That's a way of riding safely as well, understanding that because they are so unhappy, they might do something stupid.
They might also be very distracted. The only time I've ever been hit by a car whilst in a car, I've been knocked off my bicycle quite often, but the only time I've been hit in a car, I saw it happening. I was driving down a road past where Tosh lives, and somebody in front was parallel parking, so I slowed down and stopped to let them park. There was nowhere else I could go. And I watched a woman drive all the way into the back of me, and I could see it coming because she was too busy looking over her shoulder, doing something with a child in the back seat. Mm-hmm. So she looked up at the last second, and in the mirror, she was close enough I could see the look of horror on her face just before she hit me.
And of course, in the car, you can't get out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, you're much less likely to be distracted on a bike, because you've not got generally kids in the back seat and all these other distractions.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we are running over quite a bit. I need to close it down at some point because I've had a long day today, and I don't want this to go on too long. But we're having such a great, informative discussion. Why not let it linger a bit longer? So I'll go back to the Q&A, and Disuto77 says on this comment, the other thing, Andy, is that those people that move out to block you have now made you a point of interest and will likely pay more attention to what you're up to other than paying attention to the road. Good point. Yes, indeed. And I think that all equals a real big problem. So when blockers are involved, pay attention, because clearly they're not, because they're more worried about you going past them than actually staying on the road. So a very good point, buddy. Yeah. Right, back to Moto. I think he came back with what they were arguing about on the instructors. There we go. Back to Moto says he was referring to lane position. The guy with the scraped up bike says it doesn't matter. Okay, right. So there, let's just leave it there. It doesn't matter.
That one's wrong.
Yeah. See that instructor there? Yeah. Get a different job. Maybe flipping burgers. Maybe, I don't know. And of course, he says, I disagree, even though I catch myself in the centre sometimes. Yeah, you might do. You might do. It's all about the scenario. But for someone to say it doesn't matter and they're an instructor concerns me.
Sometimes the centre is the safest place.
Yes, indeed it is. Yes. It's all about the scenario. But, wow, it doesn't matter.
It's an interesting one on position because, you know, you can go through the same bend 3 different times in 3 different positions and it always be the best position to be in. Yeah. Or always the worst, depending on how much attention you're paying.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we did so much riding at the weekend. A good example of that was it was a bit windy at times, and of course there was overhanging trees, and there is an opportunity for, you know, trees, logs, branches being in the road, and a car flipped a flipping tree branch into the near side of the lane that I would have used to go around. So the centre was the best course of action, obviously. So yeah, it's all about the scenario, but overall, it's all about keeping the view and then keeping safe and everything else. Oh,
there is
complex.
There is the golden rule on that one as well. The golden rule for me and for IAM, and I think Rossbury is the same, that overrides all others is you must always be able to stop in the piece of road you can see. So there could be a branch just around that corner. There could be a car that's broken down. There could be a horse. It could be all manner of things. Every time you go into a bend, not being able to stop in the bit of road you can see, you potentially put yourself at risk.
You are, but I have to say that can be extremely difficult because, you know, that small portion of the road, you would expect nothing to suddenly to pop out of it. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. But
well, it's happened to me on my advanced test. So I was going down a backcountry road, and there was a corner ahead that you know you could easily get around at 60 miles an hour, but the view was blocked by bushes and trees and things like that. So I slowed it down to about 40, and on the other side of it was a tractor reversing because he was cutting the hedgerows, and that just gave me a little bit of extra time to either stop or, because I could see the road was clear, I could pull out and go around him. But if I'd have gone into that at 60, or if I'd been having extra fun and gone into it at, you know, a little bit more than that, I'd have been into the back of a tractor with rotating blades.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Richard. For a moment now, when you said that piece of road, I was thinking I concentrated on the road, but you know, visibility. No. If it's blind, yes, yeah. Absolutely.
That's the point. That beyond where you can see, you don't know what's there, so you should always be able to stop in the amount of road you can see. Some argue, and there definitely is a good argument in it, that you should be able to stop in less than that, because the person coming the other way, who's taken the corner too quick and now is on your side of the road, he might need to stop as well. And if you're heading towards each other at a decent speed like that, you might not be able to react.
Yeah, and
The other bit that I've never really understood, because I'm not a particularly experienced rider, is going around the corner and you're leaned over. Do you need time to actually get back upright and then stop as well, don't you?
If you look at where the video that I put up, you'll see that I'm actually leaned over when the bloke pulls out on me, and it was only because I slid the back tire out, virtually like you do on Speedway. That gave me enough time to slow the vehicle down so the car got out of the way.
Yeah, but the natural course of braking will stand you straight upright anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't. I mean like normal braking. I don't mean panic braking where people grab brakes. I mean that's not something I could ever do. But you know,
Panic braking, usually you're not upright at all.
Yeah.
no, if you grab the brakes, you'll be on the floor. But no, if you actually brake, you know, properly, you know, progressive braking, then you will end up straight anyway and going straight. There's nothing you can do about that. So definitely allow that time. And if it is blind, yeah, I'm totally like that. I mean, in my younger years, I wasn't like that, and now I'm wiser. I think I'm so lucky that I'm still here after some of the writing I did in my previous past.
Thanks.
Indeed. Right. So what I want to do now, because it's getting on a bit, is quickly close down the Q&A. Okay, wait. The son's got a crash helmet. That's great. I'm not sure how that copes with riding invisible.
Is it the light up one? I think.
Yes, it is. It's got LEDs in the front and the top and back.
Okay, so that's riding invisible. But yeah, it sounds good. And anything that helps, of course. But in your head, we're talking about rather than physically. And of course, you can ride invisible wearing a high vis vest if you like to wear those, but still ride invisible. That's the whole point. So let me go to Jasuto77 and quickly he says, on top of these sessions, I would highly recommend to even those that are experienced to go take a bike safe course. Those coppers are down to earth and bikers like us and give you tips as to keep you out of trouble. They mean you well and they see the worst. Indeed, yes. Take a bike safety course. I might do one. I don't know yet. We'll see.
You honestly should. You honestly should. I went on one with bikers who've been riding 30 or 40 years, and everybody walked away saying that they got something out of it.
Yeah.
I would say though, if you do it in your area, do the 2-day course. It's an extra tenner, but you get a day with the police and a day with one of the riding associations, and you get a lot more out of it. And hopefully, you'll carry on and do, the advanced riding and maybe become an observer and be one of the people doing the second day of the bike safe and passing it on to other people.
I was going to say, like I said at the beginning, I've been riding 30 years, and when I was watching Calm's IAM riding videos that he was doing, even I learned some stuff that I never expected to have learned.
No, and no doubt there will be some nuggets in there. I honestly, personally, I think some of it will be painful, but I know there will be some nuggets of information in there that will be valuable, and I have been considering it somewhat, so we'll see what happens there.
But people think that the police are there telling you to go slow, and they really aren't. They're there pushing you to stay legal, but to go fast. And they also explain, or they certainly did to us, what they mean by legal, and they are a little bit fuzzy. So they're saying 30 mile an hour, 40 mile an hour, 50 mile an hour. There's a number on the sign, you do the speed limit. If there's not a number on the sign, they're not quite as upset.
No. And
don't take that as advice.
No, but it's about the conditions, isn't it? You write the conditions. The national speed limit in the UK is 70 miles an hour, but if it's icy, don't ride at 70 miles an hour. Ride slower. Just have to point out.
Yeah, I mean, it's also interesting seeing the way the police ride and the fact that, you hear this phrase, the wrong side of the road, don't you? So you'll hear car drivers and think, oh, you're on the wrong side. Unless it's a dual carriageway, there really isn't a wrong side of the road. There's nothing wrong with using the right hand side of the road
No.
in the right position.
If you're lining up the apex, then the wrong side of the road is probably the best place to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's all about the situation. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise to somebody on a 125 on L plates start using the right hand side of the road for extending bends and things like that, because that's where you've got to be careful, haven't you? It might be the safest thing to do, but it exposes you to more risks, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and when oh god, that's another thing, cornering. I mean, you need power quite often if you're going to try and ride quickly or try to ride quickly. You need power, and that's something the 125 doesn't have. So when you're trying to pull yourself straight out of a corner, you won't have the power on the 125. So that's a whole other subject there. Right, Skate Cruiser. Let's quickly go to him. He says, I only ride sociably, so therefore try to avoid riding between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. and
Rush hour, basically.
Oh, okay, right, so basically avoiding rush hour. Yeah, okay. Oh, you're so sociable, Skiggy. He says cutting out of his baffles, but anyway, let's not go there. Back to road. Which reminds me, I just want to quickly touch on that. I'm just going to clear this back to road motor comment down, and then we'll just talk about making yourself aware or making others aware by noise after this, and then I will end this particular hangout, and then next week it's how to filter and how to overtake. Well, not how to, but we discuss it. Okay, I don't like to say how to, because I'm saying, oh, you're telling us this. No, we're just going to give you some what we do kind of thing tips. Right, back to Roboto. It says, road rage to a cager in my town is extremely dangerous. 7 out of 10 cages are packing as much heat as I do, so my leathers are not bulletproof. Oh, yeah, it's all different, isn't it? Of course, another level of road rage there when they've got guns. But of course, if you're riding invisible, and
they'll miss you.
Exactly, because you've got trouble, then, well, do need to have power at hand, the twist of the wrist, of course. You can get out of trouble just by going, psh, gone. So there we go. And, of course, when you are in a scenario like that, just remember that if you're on a motorbike, while I clear down the Q&A, there is the road, okay, and everyone rides on the road, but, of course, if need be, use the path, use the grass, use whatever it takes to get out of the way. And public footpaths are great. And do you know what? I don't know if you noticed, they don't have potholes. Anyway, okay, so let's
you haven't seen the path near me.
Well, I go to the council then, because there's a 444 waiting right there for a claim.
Even RJ himself goes on the public pathway. All you do is just stand off your bike, push it along the pathway till you cleared all the obstacles, get back on the road and drive away.
Yeah.
I think you should probably qualify the use of the path. That
Yes.
is in an emergency, not in general.
In an emergency, not to avoid a roadblock.
That's right. Well, it's
And,
clear.
and only with a very, very light bike like a Grom.
I was going to get a trike as well and just use the path.
Right then, so let's close this down because it has overrun, but it's been really, really useful. Let's try and get it down to an hour and a half for this one. Ride Invisible is a difficult subject, though. It's massive. We might do a part 2 or something. We'll see how it goes. But what I want to end on is noise and loud pipes save lives. Now, I just want to go through the panel and see if they've experienced if they have had, a bike with a loud pipe and a bike with a quiet pipe, any difference to other road users, demeanour, actions, and so on and so forth, and if they would like to share that. So, I'm going to start with 08 Ride.
No, loud pipes, no. All my pipes have been pretty quiet. I haven't really had any issues at all. I did read a recent blog, or rather, I recently read a blog, I don't know how old it is, about some guy complaining about a bloke with loud pipes who starts his bike up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning in a suburban area and wakes everybody up as he rides through. And there was a huge set of different comments, all the bikers on one side and all the, for want of a better word, upstanding citizens of the community complaining about noise on the other side. So, but I really understand the issue when you're riding on a main road and you're wanting others to be aware. But I think there needs to be awareness of the issues of disturbance for people if you're setting off at ungodly hours.
Well, I would say quickly to that is that when I use my MT-09 to commute, and let's just say it's ridiculously loud, but you want to see the shenanigans I go through to get out of the house and away from the house quietly. I push it out of the garage, push it onto the drive, get all the stuff on, push it down the road, and then I'm on tick over first, second, third, fourth until I get to the dual carriageway. So I think it's about consideration to others, really. Again, I think that's a social thing as opposed to a so that biker obviously doesn't really care. Probably eats with his mouth open and all sorts of disgusting habits, I'm sure.
I would have to say I'm the very similar to that. I've never had a non-standard exhaust, mainly because I've never been able to afford one. But the closest I've come is to having the oil seals go on my RD350 power valve, which then becomes loud, and the traffic hears you when it's loud. For the starting up in the mornings, I used to have to roll it down halfway down the hill, and it basically a bump start because I was living on the top of a hill. So when I get to the bottom of the road, I'd bump start it into gear, it would start up, and then I'd drive off. But I'd never stand there going ning 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 just to try and warm it up or anything, because it's antisocial and it annoys people. Yeah. And the last thing you want to do is annoy your neighbours, because you might need them at some point to keep an eye out for you if your bike is outside and somebody's looking around a bit dodgy.
Yeah,
quite pleased, mightn't they, if somebody's stealing
Richard.
Take it.
Oh look, there's some. I don't want to generalise. There's some people that look like thieves. And
you say pikeys.
No.
Just say, oh look, there are bike thieves there.
Yes, it looks like a bike thief. Mr. Considerate guy pushes it down the road, then starts it. Let's call the police or shout out the window. Mr. Inconsiderate guy that lets it warm up outside of his house and revs it and everything else. They'll be like, shh, don't tell anyone, it'll be gone. So yeah, think about it. Respect thy neighbour. That's just manners, basically. So let's go. Oh, I know. Hang on. I'm going to go to Richard because I know he had a really quiet pipe once, but then changed it. Did you notice a difference, Richard?
I'm getting some feedback. I think so for you, Andy.
Really?
Yeah, you're getting green dots.
How's that?
Still a little bit. I'll just, if you don't mind, don't boot me off. Yeah, I had the bike that was affectionately called by other people a Singer sewing machine, which was the XJ6 with its stock pipe. And I changed the pipes after several times. I was out with Danny and Tosh and a couple of others, and we'd be filtering through traffic. And if I was at the back, you would see drivers open a gap, let them through, and assume everybody had gone, and close the gap back up on me. I remember 4 of us going past a parked car, and it pulled out when I got there, and I had to take avoiding action. I nearly clipped his mirror. And I thought, that's it, I'm getting a louder exhaust. And I swapped it for one that is variously relatively loud or incredibly loud, depending on whether the baffles are in. So if I'm going out early in the morning, I'll push it to the end of the street anyway, and then the baffles are in, and off I go. And luckily the baffle fits handling under the seat. So I have noticed a difference. But I wouldn't ever rely on that. I think one of the problems you can get into, and it's like the high-vis problem. You high-vis, you've got a loud pipe, you get into this belief that everybody's going to see you, and that's not necessarily the case. Went to see Skeggy a few months back, and there's a bike there that you wouldn't say it had a loud exhaust because it didn't really have an exhaust. It just had a bit of pipe out the side of the engine that was cut off. It was a Blackbird, so a big engine bike, very loud. The exhaust pipe was about a foot long, just cut off. No cat, no silencer, nothing. That was hugely loud, and he rode off. And as he rode off, we had our fingers in our ears. Now, obviously the viewers might not know, but I'm pretty sure most people here know Skeggy has a very loud bike. This thing made Skeggy's bike sound like a sing and sewing machine. And as he rode off, a van pulled out in front of him and nearly took him off. So it's people have got loud music on, the stereos. You've got Mercedes now that have got triple glazing, so that they can't hear things outside, and they've got 1,000-watt stereos. They can have an ambulance with the sirens blaring right behind them and not know it's there. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what pipe you put on your bike, you can't rely on it. But on the other hand, I have noticed that with the louder pipes on, much rarer that people pull out. So it's a thing to have as long as you don't get complacent, I think.
Absolutely.
You also need a good horn though, because the horn will potentially get you out of trouble. Especially because the pipe, you can do your rev bombs and what have you, but that's much louder for the person behind you than it is the person in front of you. So a good horn, I think, is equally important.
A good horn.
I was trying not to laugh at that.
So was I.
Mine's 126 decibels.
What about your horn?
Yeah, that's the horn.
Okay, yeah, great, Richard. Yeah, again, people have stereos on, so again, it's the same thing. It's the same theme always. Don't believe anyone's seen you, heard you. You're invisible. It's the whole point, and it's great stuff. So I'm just going to go to Suffolk Andy. Suffolk Andy, noise. Have you noticed a difference?
As you know, I ride two bikes, ZZR 1200 and a Harley Sportster 1200. My Harley Sportster is horrific for noise. My ZZR's got Aprovic race cams on, so it's a little bit louder than a normal bike, but it's not over the top. The Harley actually sometimes, I think to myself, how the hell do I bear this? And the only thing I can say is that I think it has helped in some situations. I'm like Richard said, that don't get complacent over it, because you can't. The one thing that I have noticed, and that's in myself, is that a couple of times I've been frustrated with people and pulled back the throttle to let them know I'm there, or just to bugger off, So that can get you sometimes. So yeah, I think it does help, but I don't think it's the B end and the B end or B end or whatever they say of the situation, But I think they do help a bit. The other day I was in town, I came through town, and women were holding their ears as I went up the street, and I thought, my God, they were standing there like that as I went past, and I thought, that is so strange. But yeah, for myself though, if I get it, if I come home with it and I pull up outside my garage, I turn it off, and 'cause I know my neighbours hate it, and I push it in, or early in the morning. If I go out, I'll push it out, push it to the road, start it up very quickly, and I don't let it sort of heat up or anything. I'm off, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I do think it helps, but not 101%.
Never will.
Never will.
No. Yeah, excellent, Andy. Dave, have we done you?
Yeah, you done me. I mentioned that I hadn't changed. I've never had it, and.
Okay, cool stuff. Right, so let's just leave it to me then. All I would say is that with the new age of technology and people getting Facebook and cars and all sorts of things, and they're distracted with their phones. One thing I've noticed is that people that are distracted by their phones or other things, if they haven't got their stereo blasting, then they actually pay attention because they can hear something and they're like, oh, what's that? And that they're slightly more aware. And I've noticed that tremendously with the MT09, for example, with a quiet pipe on. It was business as usual, everyone sort of busy in their phones or whatever they're doing. But one of the things that I won't forget for a long time was I saw a lorry, or a truck, if you're watching in the US, who had his mirrors still folded in, and he was about 100 yards in front of me. And I thought, when I go past, what I'm going to do, because it will make a great entertaining video, is I'll open his mirrors for him. And I've done it before on like cars, and I published one. But what happened was, as I approached with the loud pipe, he wound down his window about 100 yards in front of me and opened his mirror to see where the noise was coming from, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. So loud pipes, yes, they're never 100%. It's the same thing. High vis, loud pipes, everything. Doesn't mean to say that you're going to change someone else's habits. They might have other distractions.
Talking of other distractions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's my distraction to say that the hangout should have finished. To be fair. So yeah, loud pipes, they help. They help people that aren't, paying attention on their phones, whatever it is. They'll look around, see where the noise is coming from. So it's another little extra piece of ammo to the whole ride an invisible thing. So I do have to end it now because I've overrun a lot, and therefore we will park it here. There may well be a part 2. We'll keep these going as long as we can. Next week is going to be overtaking and filtering, and how we go about that, and what you might want to think about that, and obviously put some input into it with Q&A and all sorts.
I think we've got a good video for that as well.
Yes, we have. There's a lot of videos out there, and I've already stocked up on a few as well myself as examples. So and we use yours as well, Andy, I think, for that. So that'd be awesome. So thank you everyone for tuning in and commenting. Extra bonus thanks to everyone in the panel. And if you want to get on the panel for the next safety hangout, then please do send an email to mrb@braindump.tv, and we can arrange that and make sure you're set and ready to go. And fresh blood is most welcome, because that's old gits, we like the new questions from new riders. It's really refreshing, so that'd be awesome.
Makes us think as well. Yes,
exactly, yeah. So I'm just going to quickly go through the panel and get them say goodbye. Richard, this is not a Thursday. So we'll just go through the panel, get them say goodbye, and then we'll see you next Sunday for another safety hangout, all about filtering and overtaking. So let's go to 08 Ride. Thank you for coming along, buddy. We'd like to say goodbye to everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, goodbye, and I'll see you soon.
Excellent. Cheers, buddy. Richard?
Yep, been really informative. Enjoyed this one. Hopefully I'll be on the one next week as well.
Excellent.
Bye, all.
Good stuff.
I'll try and sort out my lighting for next time.
Excellent. Cheers, Richard. Something, Andy.
Thank you, everybody. It's been very enjoyable, and just remember, if you can't grab a sheep, grab a granny.
Yes. Always wise words. Invisibly, of course. Excellent.
Invisibly, yeah.
Yes.
Sneak up on.
Cheers, Andy. Nice one, buddy. Dave.
Good night, everybody. Ride safe, and I hope we've helped. Even if we've helped just one person out there, we've done our job. So good night and ride safe.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Brilliant. Cheers, Dave. And that just leaves for me to close off then. Again, many thanks for tuning in. Many thanks for your questions. It's been awesome. And many thanks to the panel. And of course, only needs to say one more thing, and that is, don't forget to ride safe, ride invisible.
Invisible.
Cheers. Bye.